Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Raising Healthy Mothers. I thought I would have a really short episode today actually to talk about gentle parenting and I guess my struggles with it. This is probably going to be one of those slightly ranty episodes, but I guess after being a parent now for almost 6 years and 2 children later and always aspiring towards so-called gentle parenting, I guess I've got some opinions about it now. So, as a basic introduction, gentle parenting is about having a positive, nurturing approach to parenting. And there are so many obvious benefits to it. It's all about fostering really strong emotional bonds and supporting your child's development in a way that makes them feel safe and secure at home, where they spend most of their time and where they need to feel understood and supported, I guess. The key principles of gentle parenting are really around empathy for your child, respect for their feelings, and most of all, making sure that there was always connection to them. And these really, really resonate with me. I mean, they always have from the very beginning. Like, I really get that a child is capable of understanding what they need. They also find it really hard to regulate themselves. And the idea of gentle parenting is that you as a parent are very important in helping them to understand how to regulate themselves, because they are still incredibly immature in their brain. And in fact, the fact that really kind of, shook me and really hit me in the face actually the first time I ever heard it is that our brains never stop. They keep growing and maturing, and they only reach maturity, like true adult maturity, at the age of 25. And when you think about the expectations we put on children before the age of 25, I mean, even at the age of 5, there is so much expectation on how they should behave. You just realize how not understanding that fact about their brain development is going to be so going to affect your child's behavior and your approach to parenting so much. So, the principles of gentle parenting really, really, really resonate with me, with those kind of natural parenting instincts that I think we all have. We all naturally struggle when our child is crying, when they're whining, when they need something and you can't give it to them straight away. Like, we want it to go away. We want them to be happy. That's our instinct, isn't it? And I think that naturally aligns with so many parents. The problem I have with gentle parenting, and I don't mean this in terms of how the sort of experts of gentle parenting put it, but more in how it has come out in social media and I guess generally in the way we approach parenting, is how much pressure it puts on parents, but I think mums in particular. It can create these really unrealistic expectations, that they should always be calm, that they should never raise their voice, that they should never lose their temper, that they should always manage things calmly and, with grace and, always be able to be their child's co-regulator. And I always thought, but what about me? Who is regulating me? If I am mothering my child, who is mothering me? Because I do think no matter how old we get, we still need support from someone else. And I suppose this is generally the problem of parenting overall, is the lack of support means that when you are your child's co-regulator, you don't necessarily easily have someone to help you. Now, of course, you're supposed to be an adult and you're supposed to be able to regulate yourself. But I mean, truly, no, and I suppose that is kind of the whole point of gentle parenting, isn't it? Is that you're trying to break that cycle of maybe I didn't have that as a child and I want that as for my child. But in reality, this is something that is a lifelong learning, isn't it? That how am I going to regulate myself if I'm also trying to help my child regulate? And I think the pressures of social media is massive. And again, I don't necessarily talk. I think a lot of the kind of original maybe experts of gentle or attachment parenting or whatever, kind of frame name that you give it, I think a lot of them had this kind of realistic idea that it's hard and that it's something to work on. But I think there is so much pressure. And I think this is particularly true in the Facebook groups that I'm in, where, a parent will sort of present something they're struggling with, and the responses often tend to be very censorious. And I often think, well, have you never experienced this? I've certainly experienced this difficult situation that someone has explained or talked about. And, it often feels like, well, you need to regulate, you need to make sure that you don't lose your calm, and very censorious nature. So I think that is really not helping, actually. And so if you are, try and aspire to gentle parenting or attachment parenting values like I do, you do have to be quite careful about the groups that you're in so that they are empathetic to you. I mean, this is the thing, like, we need empathy from others to know that it is really hard. All of these values that we are aspiring to, this way of parenting, is really hard. And you need other people to say, I know, it is. I got your back. I know how it feels. And then there's a lot of the pressures as well are around that kind of perfect parenting. Like, I don't know about you, but I have this very black and white picture of what is a good parent and what is a not so great parent. I wouldn't say a bad parent. I don't think anyone's a bad parent unless they're really genuinely doing harmful things to their child, but very black and white thinking. And there is definitely shades of grey in there. You can be a good parent and also be, disappoint someone else. Like, there's often that two sides to every decision that you make, isn't there? So what do I think? Like, what's the answer? I don't know. I'm not a parenting expert particularly. My expertise is in nutrition. But I guess I wanted to do this episode to show that it is hard, and you can aspire towards gentle attachment-based parenting while also find some of it really, really difficult to cope with. So the one thing is very clear to me that I think that is often confused when it comes to gentle parenting is it's often easily slides towards permissive parenting. And I know, again, this is something that the experts kind of warn about, but I think I can see how easy it is because, you're trying to give your child choice. So you're trying to respect the fact that they might have a preference or they might need to feel in control. But I know I can quite easily go, well, actually, have this choice. And they'll be like, well, actually, that's, just do it. Just do it the other way because actually, pick my battle, And actually that phrase, pick your battle, was something I really struggled with because I was like, pick my battle, but also there are certain boundaries that other people say that they withhold and they must always withhold that. I'm like, well, why? Like, what's so important about that? But if they're saying that, then maybe I should be withholding that boundary as well. But that feels like a battle that's not worth having to me. And I think this is something, what I have really come to understand is when something your child does is genuinely triggering or upsetting or makes you angry. I mean, that's my sign, is if something makes me angry, then I know that is a boundary being crossed that I don't like, that is not acceptable. And often I will take out my anger on my child, right? I will often lash out at them and be like, you shouldn't be doing that because that's bad, whatever. The thing that springs to mind really for me is TV time, screen time, right? I was getting to the point with my children that I was very, very uncomfortable with what they were watching and how long they were watching for. And I would get annoyed at them because they wouldn't turn it off when I told them to. But actually, in hindsight, that's quite ridiculous. I mean, TV is literally designed to hit your dopamine, your dopamine levels, to keep you addicted, to keep you wanting to watch, right? So of course, it's going to be hard for them to turn it off. What I needed to do was set clear boundaries around how much time they got to watch it, what they got to watch, exactly what to expect. This is when you will turn it off. This is what I will do when it's time to turn it off. That's where I guess, the onus is on you as the parent to work out what your boundaries are and stick to them firmly. And that can be really hard. And I do think you need to be in the right headspace to do that, to set those boundaries. For a long, long time, my children watched a lot of TV because I couldn't face the idea of not having that important downtime for me to cook dinner, to kind of do a clear up around the house. And it was only when I felt in a more I had space in my head to cope with the inevitable disappointment. And this is true of every single transition that you have to do with your child. And I think the other thing that is really not obvious or not talked about enough is that no matter what habits your child gets into, whether that's with screen time, whether that's with food, behaviour, relationships, it's always a reversible phase. I mean, my children are, under 6 years old. So maybe as I get older and these habits get really ingrained, maybe it does get harder and harder. I don't know. I'm not at that stage yet. But the point is, up until now, I have always found that, any time when I feel like they've had too much sugar, they eat too much sugar in a day, or they watch too much TV, or their behaviour is, XYZ because such and such has always happened. I've always found that with clear explanations and clear setting of boundaries, that it is reversible. And it will take time, and it will be, they will be upset, they will be really unhappy with you, but only for a short time. But that's why you need to be in the right headspace to be able to cope with that. Because if you're not, then it's, that is when you might slide back on your sort of set boundaries, because you just can't cope with that meltdown and that tantrum. And it's totally okay to be like, I just can't cope with a meltdown right now. I'll come back to it. And I think, again, there is a lot of pressure to do things at a certain time. And actually, you probably do know yourself and your child the best. Like, you know your family best. You know what's going to work for your family. And sometimes, it might be better to do things a little bit later. I mean, sleep is an obvious one, isn't it? It's like, oh, my child is sleeping through the night. Well, my child isn't, but, it has massively improved. Like, he now wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning and comes straight into bed and doesn't really disturb me other than just wanting a big cuddle. Well, that's a huge difference than like a year ago when he was waking 3 or 4 times in the night and was calling out for me and wouldn't take, no for an answer or anyone else. I mean, it's all a spectrum. Every child is different, and you will get there at some point. Things can change, and you can make changes slowly as well. You don't have to make, an instant change. But the other thing that I think is really important when it comes to gentle parenting, and I don't think this is talked enough about, is looking after you too. Like looking after you first, actually prioritizing yourself. There is no way you can gentle parent in a calm, compassionate, patient way if you've only had 4 hours sleep last night. Okay? If your child is waking 3 or 4 times in the night, then you need to be going to bed at 8. If you know that after midnight your child is just awake, a lot, then go to bed early so that you get a decent amount of sleep before they do that. Okay? I'm never going to advocate sleep training. But I do think there's a lot we can do to look after ourselves so we can cope with those wakeful nights. And then there is also a lot that you can do to help your child to sleep through the night without any sleep training, without any crying it out. But you need to be in the right headspace for that. Like, I remember this when I got to that point when I was like, no, I need to change things. Something needs to change. We need to, switch over. My husband needs to take things over. And yes, of course, there was a transition period. Of course, they weren't pleased with that. But it was only when I felt ready, but also I knew my children were actually capable of it. And I think that's the other distinction is, one child might be able to sleep through the night at 2 years old, but I knew that my children, they're still not able to do that. And I'm not able to leave them to cry or to be upset without me. So, what can I do to make sure that I still get the sleep I need despite them waking in the night? And making sure that you're well fed. We put so much emphasis or so much brain power on what our children need, and we don't really think about what we need enough. And also know that it's totally okay to have tough days. Parenting is tough. Parenting alone, and I don't mean alone, if you have a partner, of course you're parenting with 2 people, but parenting without a village, parenting without a tribe, parenting without multiple generations, multiple age children all around you at all times is really hard. We're not supposed to do it like this. So give yourself grace. Like, it is okay to have tough days. And this is where self-compassion really comes in, because, we can be hard on ourselves. We can blame ourselves for everything. And for the most part, you're not to blame. Like, your child is the way they are. And things can change. Things can get better. So once you find that self-compassion, you can also find your own way of gentle attachment parenting. You can maintain the idea that the core of it, the connection, the empathy, the respect, if you truly believe that those are important for bringing up, for raising a happy, healthy child, as long as you believe those things in your core as your true values, then you're going to get it right. If you remember that those are the reasons you do things the way you want to, then you're going to get it right. Just emphasize connection. Remember that their feelings are valid and that they are worthy of your respect. It's totally normal to feel overwhelmed, and no matter how things have gone today, yesterday, last week, next week, you are doing really, really well as a mother. Like, you genuinely are. And the fact that you worry about whether you're doing things right tells me that you are an amazing parent. So just remember, gentle parenting is about maintaining connection. It's never about perfection, and it's never at the expense of your own health and well-being. I hope that's helpful. Got a bit ranty, as I said it would, but it genuinely is how I've been feeling about my sort of adventures in gentle parenting, so to speak. I'll see you next week.